everybody, it's your boy. That's right, the Versace Stunner. With another very special episode of VSW Podcast. Tonight, we're not really going to talk much about wrestling. Two great shows though over the weekend. Rise out in Rhode Island. Kim Kilgore put that on. Great show. And Pop Up Wrestling's back. Ty Mitchell's promotion. Another great show that took place over the weekend. Plus a whole other list of promotions ran shows as well. APW and others. Unfortunately, I got COVID after coming back from Florida. So wasn't at any shows this weekend, but watched plenty of movies, including the new Halloween. We're going to talk a little bit about that and a whole lot more tonight on this special episode. We don't need to keep the mask on now. Cool little pickup today. I always love this season, time of Halloween, just in general, a lot of fun. Trick-or-treating, I bring my kid, he loves it. But also just, I like to go around and just look at decorations. A lot of people, they always talk about the Christmas decoration and all of that, the lights. But Halloween's been getting bigger and bigger, at least where I live. And a lot of people are putting cool things out in their yard, different blow-up devices, all sorts of horrific little things. And, I'll take me and my kid out. We'll go look at them at night. It's been pretty cool. I'm going to try to decorate my house this year, I think. Not really sure what we're going to do. My wife's not that much of a fan of Halloween as I am, so we'll see if she lets me do what I want. But, yeah, so to the horror movies, Halloween Kills, the franchises end, or at least the new trilogy end, you can call it. I'm a big fan of Halloween. I love that movie as well. The whole franchise, when I was growing up as a kid, I remember watching them, being like, wow, it's really scary. It kind of got me into that slasher genre. From there, I, branched out into Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And as I got older, Scream came out and kind of changed the way that whole genre even went. And then over the years, Halloween has kind of been retold. Rob Zombie did it. And, a few, and then Bloom. And you had the H2O series that came out as well prior to that. But, when I grew up, it was just really the 1 through 6 and 3 not really part of any of the storyline. But, there's one thing I say about movies, and this is just in general, it's kind of like wrestling in a lot of ways. It is very subjective. Just because somebody doesn't like the movie doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It just means that it wasn't liked by that person. Same thing with wrestling. I mean, sometimes, yes, it's bad. Sometimes movies are really bad, and that's the general consensus. A lot of people gave Halloween Ends a really bad rating, but, there's probably about 25%, 30% that probably liked the movie. And it's fine that they did. It was just very different. It wasn't, okay, if you're a fan of Michael Myers, probably not going to like the movie. It wasn't much of a Michael Myers movie going into it, I can tell you that. I'm not going to try to spoil it because there's probably people out there that didn't really see it yet. And again, I don't want to really spoil it, but it wasn't really a Michael Myers movie. It was more of a Laurie Strode kind of movie. And then somebody else involved. And Laurie was just, to me, just very weathered, beat up. I was just waiting for, Shao Kahn to come out and be like, you weak, pathetic fool. She was, to me, kind of just a little cringy. She was just very tired, not like her other roles where this fighter. I didn't feel like there was much fighting to it until the very end of the movie. And same thing with Michael, though. He looked very weathered, old, not a lot of fight. So, yes, they wanted to make it 40 years later, and I get that. And, they did one thing that I think, that kind of ruined it for me, and they kind of humanized Michael, which Once you humanize the monster, then it's kind of end game. But regardless, it did come out, and it is the end of the trilogy. They can do other things. I'm sure they probably already have other movies in the works. Maybe they'll go back. Maybe they'll start a new timeline. Now we've seen many. The first timeline was pretty good though. You had 1, 2. If you don't count, 3 was different, but you had 4, 5, 6, and then 6 you had very weird. But the director then came out with his little edit, and that made more sense. Much better version is the director edit. And you can find that too. I actually got it on Amazon Prime, just bought it. But much better version of 6 than the theatrical release, I think. It explains a little bit more, and it's not so glitchy, because prior to that, nobody really heard of a lot of the lore. But they came with the whole Thorn story and all of that. But for me, like I said again, I've always been, a Halloween franchise person. That's what I grew up with. And I recently, read the novelization of the first movie, and and the '78 version was, 70, with the version that they made was, very good. When you read the book, and it kind of makes more sense and everything. I do recommend also, if you can get a hold of that, to do it. I think I saw it on like Lulu Press for like $10 for a PDF. I'm not sure. In other places in PDF form, it's expensive to find paperback version, but you can find a PDF version. Then it is worth the $10 because it is a good read. The other movies you can find quite cheaply, but the first one is a little difficult. And in 4 and 5, they kind of also introduced Michael's niece, and that brought in a whole new element too, where in the original timeline, Laurie Strode died 10 years later. She was in a car accident. The niece, Jamie, that kind of got everything revamped for that. Hey, thank you, Tough Ink. I appreciate you. Yeah. They kind of cut. In the new trilogy, they cut all the family ties from Michael Myers. None at all. There really is no family tie. So he's not. Laurie's not his sister. He doesn't have to destroy everybody in his family bloodline and all of that. So it makes it a little bit different. When a lot of the other timelines, he was the brother. But that was the timeline I grew up with. Was that 1 through 6, and reading also another thing I read, that John Carpenter wanted every Halloween to be different. He didn't actually want every movie to be about the same character. He wanted every movie to be just on the same night, different story, and they kind of started to do that. 1 and 2 was told over the course of that Halloween, but then 3 came in and it was like a Halloween, but different story, different whatever, town. Then, when 4 came around, American culture really liked the slasher killer. Jason was taken off. Freddy was taken off. Pinhead was working its way up there. You had all these people, so Michael wanted to. They had to make Michael into another slasher killer. And it worked. It worked. People love Michael Myers. And that's what I'm saying. If you're a Michael Myers fan, this movie's not for you. If you're a Halloween fan, give it a watch. It's worth the watch. But you're gonna be disappointed as a Michael Myers fan. But that's just plenty of the movies. There's some other movies that came out over the weekend. I heard Jeepers Creepers dropped number 4. Haven't seen that yet. Probably will. I wasn't impressed with 3. 1 and 2 were good. 1 was really good, I thought. 2 was it was okay, a little bit different. But it had some good parts. 3, I didn't really like it all. It was kind of made for TV, and it looked that way. But this is supposed to be Reborn. I heard mixed reviews about that. I also heard Terrifier 2 was terrifying. People getting sick, people throwing up in the theater. If you haven't seen Terrifier 1 or All Hallows Eve, I do recommend watching that. Watch All Hallows Eve first, then watch Terrifier. It's a good story. Art the Clown is the real deal. Pennywise from it is, pretty scary, but he has this comedic undertone. Not art. Art is just terrifying him. The kills are brutal. It's, a slaughter movie. And I do recommend it. I recommend it if you like that kind of thing. I also saw a weird movie over the weekend called, I think it was called Don't Fuck With Me. Or, no, I'm sorry. I'm Just Fucking With You. And it was about this guy that was running like a motel, and this other guy shows up, and he's kind of damaged. I think his fiance had cheated on him with his cousin or something, and the only person that could really calm him down was his sister. And he went into this motel, and this guy's just like, every little chance he gets is just kind of pranking him. First, after the guy paid him, he's like, all you have to do is pay me, and he's like, but I already did. No. You owe me the money. You haven't paid nothing. And he can't find it in his wallet. And, he's like, here's your keys. Just fucking with you. He does a whole bunch of just different pranks, but it gets a little bit more and more intense. And a body count starts to accumulate as well as other guests have some issues, and they start to get, taken out by this guy. And you kind of really see this guy is just nuts, crazy, just insane, and kidnaps this guy and goes on this wild ride. And it's pretty crazy that took place over the course of that night. Again, pretty funny, entertaining horror movie. Something, I think it was new. I don't know if it was on Hulu or Peacock. I was watching that as well. Like I said, I'm a pretty big fan of horror movies. A lot of them aren't that scary to me, but they're still just a good overall watch. I got that Friday the 13th box set that came out like 2 years ago with all the Blu-rays. That's, if you're a Friday the 13th fan, I do recommend buying that. It's a little expensive, but worth it. A lot of them movies were remade in 4K scans, and you can tell the difference. It looks nice visually. Also, tons of hidden features and extra features, bonuses. If you're a fan of that franchise, growing up, we'd wait Friday nights, go to the movie store, rent the VHS, go home and watch it, get scared, maybe rent a couple of horror movies. Today it's a little bit different. You have your DVDs, you have complete collections you can buy, you have whatever's on demand. There's tons of things. You can just, you can watch a massive amount of horror movies in a very short amount of time now. Whereas growing up, you'd have to wait, return the film. But, that's where it all started. That's when my love of horror started, renting those Halloween tapes. When I was a kid, my dad bringing home something, bring home Halloween 4. We'd watch it, then I'd be like, oh, can we go get 5? Can we go get 5? I want to see the next one. And, we would, watch them 1 and 2. And, other movies would be brought in, like People Beneath the Stairs, Hellraiser 1, Hellraiser 2. Hellraiser is another, series I really kind of enjoy. 1, 2, 3, and Bloodlines were really, really good, I thought. A lot of people don't like 3. I think, they all tells a story. After Bloodlines, it got really kind of weird. Every movie's kind of different. Same, characters. And then, they just remade it again. And I think the remake is really well. I liked it. I enjoyed, the Hulu version of it. I think it's something different. It's something fresh. Hellraiser doesn't have to just mean Pinhead. There's many Cenobites out there. There's many, different elements in that realm that they, the realm of hell, I guess that's what it is, that story is in. Was it as, had the best casting? I don't know. Like I said, this is all subjective. Movies are, for me, it did its trick. For other people I know, it didn't. They didn't like it at all. Thought it was horrible. But like I said, it's definitely worth the watch, especially if you're not paying for it. I mean, if you're getting these things just for free because of your subscriptions or whatever, they're definitely worth the watch. Am I running out to the theater to pay for any of these? No. I probably won't. There hasn't been a really good theater movie in a while for me. Maybe, one of the Star Wars movies or something big, Marvel movies. But for the horror movies, it really doesn't do anything. Last one I went to go see in theaters that was kind of fun, though, was the Annabelle movie. We went to it was like a premiere the night before or something, me and my friend Mike. And, they had like little treats and stuff. It was pretty cool. And, the whole crowd was into it, kind of all really big fans of that series. So it was a good time. But for most horror movies, I really don't. Conjuring, I did too. It's another one I kind of like. I really do like the Conjuring series. All of those, Annabelle, Conjuring, it's all based off true stories. You can Google it. The Warrens are real people. They used to, do exorcisms, and they have a, room full of haunted items. There's tons of haunted items. And Annabelle actually is one of them. No, it does not look like the movie prop. It looks more like a Raggedy Ann doll. But it is encased just the way it says. Do not open is written on it. And, nobody's opened. Even though they have passed, I forget what I read what happened with the estate. Somebody's in charge of that estate, though. For a while, they were bringing the doll around, and then they housed it at some museum. It is possible to see the actual doll, though. I do know that. I just don't know, like I said, who owns that Warren estate right now. If it's family members or if it's been sold to a third-party person. Not really sure. But while she was still living, she was in control of it, and it was a lot easier. She was still, I believe, doing some touring. And before that, they were doing kind of tours and doing seminars and talking about their experiences and everything. But yeah, I mean, those movies were based off true stories, so it's kind of a little bit different. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, they had some kind of factual basis of what happened to it with the Hollywood flair, of course. So, that's another good kind of series, I believe, if you like horror to get into. It's different. It's not your slasher series. It's not really your, typical horror genres. Most people think horror, they think of that slasher killer kind of chasing, the girl, the victim, the guy, whatever it is, a lot of sex, a lot of blood. That's really kind of how the 80s horrors were written. A lot of campiness, a lot of just, sex appeal. That's what drew in people. And, you add the murder and the scare and everything, and it blended nicely back then. A lot of it doesn't really transcribe so well today when they try to do the remake. I think a lot of it is the technology too. In 1980s, if you were with your friends at a beach somewhere and your car broke down, you don't have a cell phone to pull out. There's no GPS to say how to get out of there. You had a car map and you had this, and that was it. If nobody was around, you're stranded. You had to walk. You had to do this. Today, there's different. There's GPS. People are tracking you. You can be found. The risk factors that take place today are very much different. And when they incorporate that into a film, it just, like I said, it doesn't give that be scared factor. The feeling of, the characters feels a little bit safe. They're safer. Yeah, sure, the phone doesn't get service all the time. Most of the time it loses service when they need it, but it's there. It was there. They could have charged their phone. They can find a phone charger. It's just so many things now. Walk to the store, buy a phone charger. There's so many things. And so I feel like that kind of aspect of those movies is gone. But, they're going to still remake them. I heard, Friday the 13th is being remade again by the same people that brought back the Halloween. We'll see how that one goes. Their last remake of Jason wasn't that bad. It was basically a remake of the first movie, and it was okay. A little bit different. It wasn't actually it would be more remake of the second, but yeah, it was good. I thought compared better than the Nightmare Before Elm Street remake. I wasn't really a big fan of that, even though they kind of went back to Freddy's original kind of lore, where he was, um, he was more than just a killer. He was into child being a child predator and other aspects that they kind of just got rid of in the original series. And this was, kind of smart. Freddy became a pop icon as well. Kids were looking up to him. Not looking up to him, but kids liked him. They loved him. I remember growing up, my friends, would dress up as Freddy as Halloween, and their parents would be okay with it. One of my friends, used to collect all the cards and this and that. He was a very mainstream horror fan, and he brought a lot of comedy into the horror. There was, a lot of memorable scenes, especially in, the third and the fourth movie, that really, kind of just captivate audiences. An audience loved Freddy. They couldn't really make him a pedophile and have the fans loving him now, could they? No. Wasn't going to fly, so they dropped that part and just made him, a child killer. Like, that's any better. But it is in that sense that, he just killed him. So he became more likable. When they went to remake it, they went back to the original plot. And that new Freddy was not perceived well at all. Of course, also wasn't Robert Englund. There's only really one Freddy if you think about it, and that is Robert Englund. He played all the movies. That's another one of my favorite franchises. They had great moments. And even that Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I really enjoyed that one. A lot of people give that, a lot of hate, but I think it was kind of written pretty nicely and bringing in the real world into that, kind of like, breaking the kayfabe of what the movie industry is, but now it's happening there, and it's real life, and it was interesting. It had a good premise to it, I think. And, like I said, though, a lot of these movies got sequel after sequel after sequel, and none of them are going to be as good as the original movie. But they all each had their, individual part in it, and making the lore in the series good. But, that, again, is one of my other favorite ones. Friday the 13th, like I said, that was good. You have a lot of Jason films there. Jeepers Creepers. The first one, like I said, was really good. I enjoyed that one. And there's also, a bunch of new horrors, kind of the new school horror around that I'm really kind of into too. And I don't know if you like them or not. And like the Get Out movie, that was interesting. A little bit different. It's actually one of the only horror films my wife will watch with me. She doesn't really like horror at all. Actually, no, she hates it. She hates horror. She hates this time of year. She hates Halloween. The only time she was happy is when we went to the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween parade down in Disney World, and she was able to go out there and she was in Disney World, and it's not so scary, and they were giving out candy and stuff. She was happy there, and that's about as much of Halloween as she likes. She really doesn't like the scary stuff, but she will watch Get Out, and pardon me. But yeah, she would watch that, and it was a good movie. I thought it was well written, and it gave it, a different sense of horror, a new sense of horror. It was more of like, a mental horror rather than this physical horror kicking place. And that's what really kind of captivated me today in what horror movies I watch. Yes, I'll go back and watch classic movies, even movies like Leprechaun. They're funny, but they have their good kill scenes. Another one, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. First movie was really good. Second movie was okay, and it kind of just went crazy. The remakes, they were okay, but it's not the original, and you're not going to get the original feeling from the original cast. And they keep remaking more and more of them, and because these killers just, like I said, it's fans of the killer. You're fans of Leatherface, you're fans of Myers, you're fans of the Leprechaun. Even they made plenty of sequels to that. Leprechaun in Space, Leprechaun in the Hood, tons of stuff. Why? Because these characters are so loved. You got to keep bringing them back. It doesn't really matter about the plot. It's the character that people are paying to see. And that's, again, why I think people were so disappointed with Halloween Kills. Not enough real Michael. But what I was about to say is, what I look for today in horror movies is a good psychological, more like a psychological thriller or something more psychological horror, something that really like plays with your mind. Uh, and there's a few out there, and sometimes you get lucky. But I mean, also there's other movies that aren't so much. There's a killer at you. You also have the Final Destinations. Those were different. Instead of a killer, you had death itself stalking people, and every movie, yes, kind of was the same. Where somebody would see a premonition and everybody would be saved, and then they would start dying in the same order as the premonition in weird and freaky ways. But it was interesting in the weird and freaky ways they died. Some of them were pretty like cringe, like oh wow, like hard to watch, but it it told a good story. Truth be told, I am like I said, another big fan of that franchise. And even the last one they make, Saw was another one. Good storytelling, a lot of different movies, but nothing will beat that first Saw feeling, or even that second Saw feeling of like, wow, this is. But it keep going for him. Jigsaw was another one that people wanted to see. They like Jigsaw. That didn't even have to. Movies don't even have to sometimes make sense. I mean, Jason X. They threw that in there when just to keep the franchise going. It's Jason in space. Is it the best movie? No, but people liked it because it had Jason, even if they didn't like the movie. And that's kind of what it's like sometimes, even in wrestling. If you want to bring it back to that, sometimes you'll have really bad matches, or no storylines, but it doesn't matter because your favorite superstar is in it, and you're just seeing them. That's what you're paying to see. Nothing else, nothing more. But there should be, like I said, I always look to see what's coming out, what's being remade. Last year was, what was it, the Candyman? That was good. I mean, the remake was okay, but I thought the movie overall was good if you stand it alone. You can't really compare these remakes to the classics because you're not going to get the same feeling. You're not going to get the Tony Todd playing, the Candyman that he played when he, first started in the role. You're not going to get these people. You're not going to get that same kind of feeling. So it's hard to compare the two when you have a remake. But if you stand it alone and put it up against nothing, then yes, it's a pretty good movie. And that's a lot of these remakes. And how I look at it, if you don't put it to its original, they're fine. Once you compare, then yeah, it's gonna look inferior. It's not gonna look as good. It's boring because you've seen it before. Well, yeah, of course you've seen it before. It's a remake. It's a reboot. And that's the problem. I think right now is Hollywood wants to reboot things. People want to relive their childhoods and their memories. And they're bringing back sequels. Look at Hocus Pocus 2. They're doing these things that are kind of like nostalgic to bring back, memories. And I don't know, some people are for it, some people are against it. Rob Zombie just did The Monsters. A lot of people had a lot of hate for that because it wasn't like the original. And, they just, Rob Zombie kind of butchered a lot of things. A lot of people aren't a fan of his in the movie realm. I thought House of a Thousand Corpses was fine, and that whole movie genre special. Halloween 1 he remade was good. I mean, it was a retold story, but he got into depth into Michael's head and showed this whole abuse thing and why he was the way he was. And it gave a different light because if you look at the '78 version, Michael is just this normal kid with a family, and all of a sudden he kills his sister, and that's it. Parents come home to see him, and that's all we see, and it's all we know until how many ever years later, and he's escaped and we're back in the hospital. It doesn't show the transition. It doesn't show the hospital. It doesn't show any of those scenes. So Rob Zombie kind of went back and explained that stuff and went back in there, and it worked for him in a way. But then in 2 it kind of just got wacky and just sort of kills, and I'm not really a fan of that. But and some of his other movies I wasn't really a fan of either. I wasn't the Salem movie and the other one, but the House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects and all of those, I really liked that. The Dr. Satan storylines, and all their characters was cool. I thought Otis, was good. All of them.
That was actually one of my favorite movies when it came out. Was House of a Thousand Corpses. Had a lot of good music in it. The soundtrack was decent. It was by Rob himself and a lot of others, and it was a good time. But seeing them rework movies, I'm not really sure. Like the Monster movie, I wasn't really a fan of it. I like the original show, but when you start just changing characters and stuff, it gave it a different and a weird vibe for me. But there is people out there that do like it too, though. Don't get me wrong, they were saying it's a fresh look. And if you didn't compare it to the original, how would it be? If the original Monsters never had aired, would this be a good product? Maybe, possibly, it could be. Again, it's all subjective, though. It's how does it make you feel? It's not going to make you feel the same way it makes me feel, and the same way the next person feels. It's all different. So, I mean, you kind of just got to take all these movies with a grain of salt. That's what I do. Can't get mad at them. I know people that get very mad after watching a movie, and it's like, it's just a movie. Relax, calm down. It'll be okay. It really will. Hope everyone's liked this and enjoyed this tonight, just talking horror movies and stuff. We might do another one before Halloween, not sure. There's still a whole bunch of list of movies to talk about. One of my other favorite movies before I go, we'll talk about a little bit, is Dead End. It was, an early 2000s movie. Has Lynn Shay in it. A family goes for the holidays to take a road trip, and they get on a stretch of road, and it just doesn't seem to end. They can't get out. All they keep seeing is signs from a mysterious town, and their passengers keep getting abducted one by one as the night goes on. More and more of craziness unfolds, and it's just a great overall movie, in my opinion. One of my favorite horror movies, actually, of all time. And it's called Dead End. If you can watch it, go for it. I think it's on Amazon Prime for free. It's probably streaming elsewhere as well. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Drop it in the comments. And have yourself a good night. Watch some good scary movies. There's plenty of them on this time of year, if that's your thing. All these channels are hosting just marathons of horror movies. All the streaming channels have put out tons of free horror movies. That's the great thing about this time of year. If you're a horror fan, they put out all these free movies. Gotta love it. Okay, everybody. Hope you have a good night. And we'll be back soon with more wrestling action. XUC will have some matches coming out this week. And can't wait to see it.
Have a good night.
Gaming. Fiend One Gaming. Have a good night. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. Peace out, everybody.